Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and thanks for watching. And the second series of interviews with the Governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Ed Rendell, after these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Last week we chatted with the governor about the Pennsylvania primary. It's red hot. Make sure everybody gets out to vote, even Republicans. Even though you're not in a presidential primary, you have candidates on the ballot. Go vote. Come on, right? We want everybody to get out and vote. We don't care.
Bigger the turnout, the better.
Yeah, I think you're right. All right, Governor, look, I want to turn to your program a minute, and a couple of things have happened, and some things have not happened. I want to talk about one of the things that happened that deals with guns, and then I want to talk about one of the things that's been postponed until after the primary, and that's something a lot of interest in the state, and that's this smoking ban stuff. So let's talk about the gun owners thing. Gun owners have had a rally. They're making this argument. They don't want any changes in the gun control laws, although they do support some aspects like extending the so-called Castle Doctrine, but we don't have to go there. I want to now, where does all this go? You're a huge proponent of, come on, talk about the things you want the legislature to do.
Well, we certainly want a law that would require somebody to report a lost or stolen firearm. We do it for automobiles. It's nonsensical not to do it for firearms. That would help the police find these straw purchasers. We want a law that limits you to purchasing one handgun a month. We want a law that will allow local governments to enact their own gun laws. So if Philadelphia wants to have stricter laws in Elk County, which makes sense, they can. Those are the three major initiatives, Terry. And we lost on the lost and stolen bill. We had a vote in the House floor, something we've never gotten before.
And you got
75 votes, and a lot of, for the first time, a lot of Republicans from the Philadelphia suburbs joined us. And I think it's a battle of attrition. I think one day, not too soon, not too soon, but not too far, we're going to see lost and stolen passed, and we're going to see real consideration of one gun a month.
Well, I mean, look, we have a huge number of sportsmen's clubs in the state. The NRA has, I guess, the highest number of their membership per capita of any, something like 850,000 hunting license. This has been a tough a tough struggle for gun control advocates. I mean, everybody agrees with that.
It has, except the fact that, you know, what you just said is the common mistake people make. You didn't say it, but that NRA members are automatically against this legislation. In fact, lost and stolen, the duty to report it, 74% of the voters in the state support having gun owners report when a gun is lost or stolen. It's common sense. And that means an awful lot of NRA members as well support that. And if you were a hunter, why would you care about a law that only applies to handguns and says you can buy 12 a year? What intrusion on your rights is that? 12 a year. Who needs more than 12 handguns a year?
If the Castle Doctrine, you know, is this argument, is this position, this legal doctrine that says if you're in your own home and somebody comes in and they have a gun, you don't have to retreat. You can, you know, they're in. You can. Well, you're a DA.
But no duty to retreat.
Now, how about the proposal to extend it to out on the street? Would you veto that automatically, or would you want to look at it? You know, if you're out,
I'd want to look at the different parts of it and see what it really says. But generally, I'd be against anything which would make it easier for people to discharge a firearm with intent to kill. You have to have an immediate threat, and if you can retreat, like say somebody's coming at you with a knife from 15 yards away, and you're standing next to your car. Well, before you shoot and kill that person, you should be required to get into your car, turn the key. He's only got a knife. He can't get you from 15 yards away. Get out of there before we take another human life. And I would hate to see the duty to retreat totally done away with.
I mean, I don't even know if that's something that's going to even emerge as a vote, but I know that was part of the rally that took place. Yeah. All right. Let's turn to another issue, and I think this is one that you know, for some reason I thought this was going to pass pretty easily, and that was, and maybe I'm naive about it, and that was the smoking ban. Now we're going to have to go to a break in a minute, but you know, you got different versions passed both chambers. It's in conference committee. What's your sense? I mean, what is it that you have to have in a bill in order to sign it?
Well, I want to see a statewide smoking ban with as few exceptions as possible. the House bill that was passed is better than the Senate bill. But when they get into conference committee, if they send me a bill with limited exceptions, I will sign it. If they send me a bill that's loaded up with nonsensical exceptions, I'll veto it. Because a smoking ban has to be worth something.
I want to talk a little bit about those exceptions. We're going to go to a break. We're chatting with the Governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Edward G. Rendell. More with the Governor when we return.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Pennsylvania Medical Society. Doctors and patients, preserve the relationship. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Welcome back for the second in our two-part interview with Governor Rendell. We're talking about his legislative program and where it stands. And I know, Governor, we're talking about the smoking ban. And, I mean, casinos they're a little up in arms about it. You have the folks who do these so-called tobacco shops, and then I think a little more complicated might be the taverns, you know, the size. And
sure.
Are those exceptions generally ones that you're okay with, or do you?
Well, the interesting thing is, I would look at it. I would love to see it just a straight ban. I don't think it hurts anybody in the long run. I think it improves people's business. When New York proposed the smoking ban, the restaurants were up in arms. Since that time, business is better in New York. And plus, there are employees who suffer from secondhand smoke brutally, and now the employees are happier and healthier.
And there are some restaurants in Pennsylvania that have done it voluntarily.
And it's helped their business.
I think the problem is more these smaller taverns, you know, where they go ahead.
There will be some exceptions for private clubs, like American Legion Post, etc. I think you'll see exceptions. Maybe exceptions based on the size of an establishment, like a very small neighborhood tavern. But some of the exceptions that they want to put in, there was an exception at one point, Terry, that says for child care places, when you have a child care facility in your own home, which you can do for 6 or less children, you can smoke. Well, you want to smoke around children? That was, the legislature's done some dumb things. That was about as dumb as it came.
And that one would have gotten your veto, I presume.
Absolutely. I said that.
All right. Turning to another subject, I want to talk a little bit about the stimulus package. And I think there's something that's not gotten as it's not been made as clear. Now, you said no because of the budget, I guess, this year. We're not going to do the stimulus package or the rebate as part of the stimulus package. But they're still part of the economic development component that you're pushing for in the legislation. Am I right about that?
Yeah, the great part of the program was things that actually create jobs. Bricks and mortars, construction jobs, building jobs, road building jobs. The rebate we decided not to do because the federal government had already done the rebate. And secondly, there was opposition. Some people said, well, give the rebate to everybody. And we couldn't afford to give the rebate to everybody. But things that create jobs, that create orders for Pennsylvania businesses. Like everyone knows, we have to rebuild our roads and our bridges, our dams, flood prevention, things like that. I wanted to spend an extra $250 million this year on our infrastructure, desperately needed. I wanted to spend over...
Well, that should have bipartisan support, that program.
It should.
Part of it, shouldn't it?
Jonas Salk. All that needs is restructuring some of the tobacco fund money so we can put together a fund of $1 billion for constructing new buildings for our medical research centers all over the state. That's a great job creator. The energy bill itself that's stuck in conference committee, the energy bill itself would put over $500, $600, $700 million into building factories for alternative and renewable energy. Everything that will spur development and building creates jobs that can't be outsourced and orders for Pennsylvania steel companies and timber companies and electrical supply companies.
Before you go, I want to ask you this question about what you think the general health of the state is. Now, we're projected right now to have a surplus. It may diminish a bit as we'll see what revenue collections are like. How concerned are you, not about this year's budget, but about next year's budget, given the state of the economy?
Well, we're doing very well. We're doing much better than other industrial states. People say Pennsylvania is just another Ohio. No. As of the end of January, we had the highest number of jobs at any time in the state's history. Our unemployment level had been lower than the national average, 60 out of the last 61 months, Terry. And the good news is we're going to have a surplus, probably between $300 and $400 million. Well, almost every other large state in the union is going to have billion-dollar plus deficits. Next year, we're still going to have growth. Even the most pessimistic forecasters are projecting growth for Pennsylvania. But the growth will be lower than inflation, at least in the first half of the year. So we have to be careful. But at the same time, we have to invest in things that produce jobs. The reason we're better off than those other states, Terry, and you know this, because in 2003, we passed a $2.8 billion economic stimulus package that attracted $19 billion in private sector funds. Right. And that money went into our economy and has created these jobs and created all this momentum that has put us in so much of a better state. Now, the legislature has taken the position initially, particularly the Senate Republicans. The House Democrats have done a very good job, but the Senate Republicans say, well, let's wait until we do the budget. Well, we don't do the budget till the end of June or July. If we're really going to stimulate the economy, let's do it now. Let's do it the first thing in May and get people to work by September. We can do that.
All right, Governor, thanks for coming in. All right, we come back. The primary's coming up. We're going to have a little analysis. We'll see who's going to win, and we'll get into that with our next two guests following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. All right, here we go. We're on the eve of the red-hot Pennsylvania primary, 7 weeks long. Joining me to bring our final assessment is Pete DeCoursey. He's the Bureau Chief of Capitol Wire. They've done great work at Capitol Wire, on not only in the coverage of the Capitol, but on the coverage of the presidential primary. And one of my favorite analysts, Fred Anton, he's the president of the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Peter, I'm going to start with you. I'll tell you, you've been writing about this and covering it almost 7 long weeks. It is down to the wire. What does Hillary Clinton, I'm going to ask you this, what does Hillary Clinton have to do to hold on to this slender lead?
She has to widen the doubts that she's sown about Reverend Wright's comments and about the bitter comment when Barack Obama at a San Francisco fundraiser said that people in Pennsylvania in small towns are bitter because they've been messed with and not rewarded by presidents for 30 years, and they take refuge in guns, racism, and religion.
You think that lingers?
Oh,
I think that's a lingering
yes.
problem.
That's a huge problem for him because he is so cool and so charismatic that the one question people have about those Charlton Heston, godly George Clooney types like Barack Obama is, does he like me? Does he care about me? And when you act patronizing and elitist, and there's no way to spin that statement that isn't patronizing and elitist.
All right, Fred, I want to go to the area you know best. You're a Philadelphia guy. I mean, you cover the state, but you live in Philadelphia. You know that region quite well. Obama is expected to sweep down there. What's your estimation about what you think has to happen, particularly in the vote-rich Philadelphia city and suburbs on the Democratic side?
Well, I think Obama will do very well in Philadelphia. Now, my perception and my observation over a number of elections, both of all kinds, is that African-American Philadelphians vote for an African-American or vote for a black. And I believe that the vote will be 90-10, that there will be no more than 10% of the African-Americans who will vote for Hillary. I would also say that the Republicans in the surrounding counties to Philadelphia, there's been a huge registration in those counties, and they've registered Democrat. Those are Rockefeller Republicans who are inclined to be liberal Democrats, and I believe that Obama will get a substantial vote in the...
But here's one interesting thing. In polls of those 4 suburban counties, Clinton has now narrowed that to 50-50. Obama can't win the state and can't even lose with a respectable number of delegates if he ties in the Philly burbs.
You really think that, hold on, you really think that given the kind of voters there are more affluent, upscale, college-educated, Obama's voters, that Obama won't win the Philadelphia suburbs? Let's say 55-45. Is that an unreasonable... We're talking now about the 4 counties in the Philadelphia suburbs, Peter?
I think he could, but the polls are now showing it much tighter. And what people tend to forget, and Neil Oxman, Governor Rendell's ad guru, likes to say this, there's lots of, people forget the suburbs are not only, Paoli, they're also Warminster. They're also places, they're also Doylestown and Norristown.
Well, there's also, Fred, an area you know well out in Delaware County, a lot of Catholics who moved out of Philadelphia, and she does well among Catholic
Delaware
voters.
County is a pitched battle when you talk even to some of the leading Obama supporters.
But do you both agree, in order to win this state, Barack Obama has to sweep the Southeast? Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do agree with it. I think that the voters which he allegedly offended are older, more traditional Democrats that disparaging either God or guns is not good in those constituencies.
You mean out in the western part of the state?
And the western part of the state,
voters.
And throughout the state where there are Democrats, those Democrats will vote for Hillary Clinton.
Right.
They're older.
Now, Peter, let's go to the heart of this. Is it a possibility that what Fred says, that the Bittergate, as it's called, reinforces Hillary's support, but
in the West, Northeast, and Central.
Right. But for Obama supporters, it doesn't matter. Does that net out to a wash, or?
It depends on what happens with the 5 to 8% who are still undecided.
Yeah.
Got to remember, if those folks vote, and this is one of the few races where I think a lot of the undecideds will vote, because it's been. You have to understand, this has been like the World Series of Pennsylvania. We have become Iowa for 7 weeks. You can talk.
We have that. Isn't that the truth?
You talk to normal Pennsylvanians, and they sound like pundits.
All right, we're going to go to a break. We'll come back and we'll let Fred. This is it, the final analysis on Pennsylvania Newsmakers before the red-hot Pennsylvania primary on April 22. Remember to go and vote. Even if you're a Republican, there's lots of things to think about on the Republican ballot as well. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Penn Future, where we believe that every environmental victory grows the economy, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. All right, Fred, when I was getting out of that last segment, I talked about, other voters. I mean, gee, this has to be tough on people running for the legislature in these primaries. Peter was talking about this at the break in the congressional primaries. Is all the oxygen been sucked out of this?
Well, it isn't in Philadelphia because I live in downtown Philadelphia, and Senator Fumo is retiring.
That's right.
And that is a very, very hot race with John Doherty, the Electrical Workers Union president, running, and Fumo has a candidate in Farnese who he has really not owned up to, and there's a third candidate in the Democratic primary, Ann Dicker, who's
is it hard to get publicity? Because
no, it's not hard to get publicity.
But in other parts of the state, it is.
One article, but I think Fred would agree, there would be 10 times as many articles about Doherty, Farnese, Dicker as there have been if this giant behemoth race had. I mean, the Inquirer. I run into 6 different Inquirer reporters when I go to campaign events for Obama.
I think the coverage has been overwhelming on the president. I mean, a lot of reporters that I don't want to get too inside. I want to get to something else here. a lot of reporters are covering the presidential race and not these legislative races.
But hasn't the presidential race and the presidential primary date been great for Pennsylvania?
Oh,
I mean, this has brought
I
national attention.
We agree.
And,
you agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
All right, come on. We're going to run out of time. What's the end game here? What does Hillary Clinton have to do to keep viable? What does Barack Obama have to do to end her? Can Pennsylvania be the end of this nomination process?
Barack Obama has to do 48% or better to have a reasonable argument that she should get out, and to show that the bitter arguments didn't hurt, which would preserve his chance to win in North Carolina and end it.
Okay. So, Fred.
John McCain is a tremendous...
I'm going to go there. You anticipated me. John McCain and Hillary or Barack, is he competitive with them in Pennsylvania?
He's very competitive with them. He is has a profile which I consider to be just tailored to win Pennsylvania, slightly left of center on many issues. And the fact that he's a war hero is going to enhance his candidacy tremendously as we go on. He's going to get all the right-wing votes. The conservatives are going to vote for John McCain.
You agree with that?
Yes.
So before we're getting out of here, but let me just make sure we understand this. So do you agree with Peter that if Obama comes 3-4 points away from Clinton, her campaign is damaged irreparably?
I agree with the polls that say Hillary will win by 6 points, 50 to 44.
Well, but wait a minute. Whoa. 6 points? That's kind of neither fish nor fowl, isn't it?
Right.
Go ahead.
6 points. Close for him is 4 or closer. He's got to get to 48 to make the argument that she's done, because this is a good state. Should be a good state for her. And then he goes on and wins in North Carolina, because if he can get to 48 here, he can get to 53 or 54 in North Carolina.
So you're saying 4 points or less that she's damaged?
She's damaged, and 2 points or less, and she's done.
Yeah. All right, Fred. Your assessment.
By the way, I think she's going to win by closer to 10, and I think he's going to go to North Carolina with trouble.
What did you say?
I say 6.
6. So, and in the end game, Pennsylvania matters, but it may not be decisive.
That's right. It won't. I don't think it will be decisive.
You think the race goes on anyway?
I think the race goes on. I think
it'll show whether or not the bitter issue has legs, which could affect North Carolina, which is a state he has to win.
All right, great update. All right, we'll get you guys back here. I want to get you guys back here. We got to get our heads back in the Pennsylvania legislature, as you know. There is a legislature, there is a budget and all that stuff going on. Thanks for watching. As always, vote on April 22nd. We'll see you next week for another edition. And as always, stay well.